pleased. In fact, I've heard from a number of people that watch this program that are frustrated that everything the president does gets blocked. And that's just one of their concerns. Another, the fact that these DOJ cuts have not been taken into the House and put on the floor by Speaker Johnson. That is frustrating people that voted for Donald Trump, too. Not at him, but at the process in the courts and the process in the House. Joining me now is John Thomas. He is the Nestpoint Managing Director. He's here to talk about these tariffs. John, welcome to the program. First of all, let me say this. This court was a court I wasn't even familiar with prior to yesterday's injunction on the tariffs, which basically takes away all the leverage from this president. How is he going to negotiate with folks? Now, Caroline just told us the negotiations will continue in good faith, but you have to wonder if that's really true. If you're China or Canada and you don't want to deal with these tariffs, and now you see an American court say that Donald Trump is outside of his executive authority by doing these things, are you really going to negotiate in good faith? John, what are your thoughts?
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. Yeah, this is a major issue. Really, it's judicial leftist activism that has so much Trump derangement syndrome that they're willing to hurt the United States of America in a pivotal time. Look, President Trump's vision to rebalance trade and do, in particular, reciprocal tariffs was working. Countries and companies were coming to the table, Steve. And what this does is it is going to slow that down, but I don't think it's going to stop it. And here's why. President Trump and his team have said they're going to appeal the ruling, and whether or not they prevail, and I hope they will, I think this goes to the Supreme Court to decide, President Trump has other tools in his toolkit as it relates to tariffs. What was interesting, Steve, in the ruling last night was that while these activist judges said that the Liberation Day tariffs were not authorized or within President Trump's approval, first of all, they're wrong on that, but they particularly omitted other kinds of tariffs that the president has levied under sections 301 and 302. And I apologize for being technical, but it matters, because if it turns out, if this goes to the Supreme Court, well, if it goes to the Supreme Court and this ruling is upheld, President Trump can go to these sections 301 and 302 and increase those. So he has other tools in his toolkit to get this done. The biggest problem this causes right now, Steve, is confusion. And that's not good.
And that's exactly right. It's confusion. Now, I just pulled up to see where the markets are at this hour. The Dow is up 67 points. There's NASDAQ 45 points. The S&P 500 14 points. Basically unchanged for the day. The market's unimpressed. And to hear the liberal commentators last night, the market was going to go skyrocket because Trump had been taken out of the way and so on and so forth. That's also false. What we have here is a plan that was put together late in the Biden administration to fill all of those judicial positions, to flood the zone, to thwart Donald Trump at every turn. Clearly, that's the plan. Chuck Schumer talked about it. Other Democrats talked about it. They got a bonus last night from this court on tariffs, I believe. But this is the game plan. Try to stall Donald Trump's agenda for as long as possible and see if you can hold him off until the midterms at least. And if you get a favorable return for a Democrat Congress, House at least, then they think that they can block Trump for the entirety of his administration. I don't think it's going to work, John. I think that the Supreme Court's going to step in. I believe that Congress is going to have to step in, not just on this court over tariffs, but on all these other issues. Like I said, I mean, how many injunctions have been issued? Dozens, scores, and lawsuits to boot as well. This is not what the American people voted for, is it?
I completely agree, but here's the good news, Steve. President Trump is used to the kitchen sink being thrown at him, whether he's running for re-election or last time around. He almost always overcomes this. This is unfortunately what he's kind of come to be used to. But here's the good news, Steve. President Trump has already set a rebalancing and a re-onshoring of trade in motion even before this activist ruling. And I can just tell you, at my firm, Nestpoint, we're advising a lot of American companies that once purchase their products from China, they are decoupling from China and they are onshoring whether or not the tariffs remain in place. They are following President Trump's vision. We're seeing that not just with our clients, but with major manufacturers. Jobs are coming back to the United States. That's happening no matter what an activist judge wants. I just wish the judges would step aside and let President Trump finish this job for the American people.
Well, unelected judges blocking his agenda every step of the way is not what 77.5 million Americans voted for. But you make a great point. We are onshoring, and that'll be emphasized tomorrow by Donald Trump when he travels to Pittsburgh to discuss the $14 billion being pumped into U.S. Steel by Nippon Steel out of Japan. And by the way, it will still be called U.S. Steel. Andrew Carnegie would probably have it no other way, obviously. But then you look at a Honda manufacturing facility being built in Indiana. You look at a Hyundai manufacturing plant being built in Arizona. You look at the Apple campus that's going to be built in the city of Detroit. And the list goes on. Those are just some of the examples that come to mind as I'm standing here talking to you, John. The investments into the United States from places that would not have otherwise come here and done that is ongoing. And look, Nippon's not going to back out. Honda's not going to back out. None of these people are going to back out. Apple is going to continue to invest in America, and all these other companies are as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's not just the big companies, Steve. You're absolutely right. It's even the medium and small size, great American brands like Lennox Glassware, Instant Pot. There's new upstart car manufacturers like Faraday Future in California. They are going full steam ahead to manufacture here in the United States. And what they're looking actually at, Steve, is they're looking at this as a competitive advantage. It's not charity. They see it as a smart play to onshore in the United States, to decouple from China. This already is in motion. The issue at hand with these activist judges that are trying to stop President Trump is the larger bilateral trade deals that President Trump is trying to get through.
Sure.
But industry is coming back, and so are jobs. That's in motion and can't be stopped.
Yeah, and I want to stay with this deal in Pittsburgh for a moment. Nippon Steel. Look, the steel industry is the backbone of American industry. It means auto manufacturing. They want to build more ships here. It means critical manufacturing at all levels because you have the steel, which is the backbone of American manufacturing, historically speaking. But as the Chinese built hundreds of ships last year, we built 6. So we need to pick up the pace on that. And in order to do that, you have to have American-made steel. And so Donald Trump sees exactly where this is going. We'll be with him tomorrow in Pittsburgh covering that story in person. But that's a huge investment in America, not just in U.S. Steel, but in all the other related industries that will use that steel to build America.
You hit it on the head, Steve. Number one, it's a national security prerogative. What a huge win for President Trump and America for expanding and keeping U.S. Steel here. The second is what we like to call jobs adjacent. Everybody's focusing on the initial manufacturing jobs, but what about all the small businesses that service U.S. Steel? The accounting jobs, the trucking jobs, these are all important. And then all of the other manufacturers, including car manufacturers that rely upon steel, construction plants. All of these industries now can thrive because U.S. Steel is going to be better than ever. And credit goes to President Trump for putting that deal together and getting across the line.
Well, John, you're exactly right. You can't build a skyscraper without I-beams, right?
That's right.
You can't put concrete down without steel mesh if you want reinforced concrete. All of these things in manufacturing and building trades. And by the way, that's something Donald Trump understands, I-beams and mesh in the concrete to make sure that it lasts a long time. So here we are on the threshold of another new day in America because of all of these things that Donald Trump's done. Regardless or in spite of the injunctions being issued, ICE is going to do its job. The Border Patrol is going to do its job. The manufacturers are doing their jobs, and we are moving forward. And look, Donald Trump may have lost a bit of leverage here, but he has not lost the momentum. And I think that's what you were saying, John. The momentum was already moving forward because people know that Donald Trump is serious, and he will find a way, whether it's if he has to go a different direction and use different sections of the law to implement tariffs to make sure that he has the leverage he needs to equalize these trade deals with China or Canada or elsewhere. We've already seen a great deal from the UK. In fact, I was talking to some agricultural friends of mine. They think it's a great deal. A lot of ag exports are going to be going to the UK that previously did not. So Donald Trump has the momentum, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And that's why the stock market didn't flinch, because one thing we know about President Trump, he doesn't quit. If one door is closed, he's going to go through the next. So look, the implications are broad here. It's not just big onshore manufacturing. It's little. I think these trade deals still get done. Might take a little bit longer, unfortunately, thanks to these activist judges. But overall, it's working. And the other thing we're not talking about, yes, U.S. Steel's critical, but what do all these new manufacturers manufacturing jobs and onshoring require power and energy. And what President's done with his deregulation agenda has allowed the U.S. energy markets to thrive so that we have energy to power all this new manufacturing growth.
Yeah, and one more last thought on the Pennsylvania deal. Pennsylvania, the most critical of the 7 swing states, according to many. Donald Trump wanted the Rust Belt, so one of the first big deals he puts together delivers tens of thousands of jobs to Pennsylvania. You think those people will remember when it comes to the midterm elections? I believe they will, John, so you cannot underestimate the political calculus here of why he worked so hard to get the deal with Nippon and the U.S. Steel, because it means it could pay political dividends in the midterm. So I'll give you a last word here.
That is 100% correct. You cannot forget the electoral consequences in the midterms and also the presidential. I just got a call today from a large glass manufacturing plant that had been closed in Pennsylvania that said, hey, thanks to President Trump, we're going to reopen that plant. We're going to expedite that quickly. Look, this stuff has consequences. It's jobs. People don't forget that. And that will allow President Trump to hang on to power in the midterms. And once we get past that, he can continue to drive his agenda and then position the United States for a successor to continue this golden age agenda.
There you go. John, greatly appreciate you being here. You're right. The markets didn't panic. I don't think Donald Trump ever panics. He just figures out a different path towards success. Thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. All right, we're going to continue this conversation. America's Voice Live, a special edition coming to you from the North Lawn of the White House, where Caroline Levitt just wrapped up her daily briefing, talking at length about these tariffs and about these injunctions and about how the administration is being stopped, at least temporarily, but they have complete faith in the Supreme Court. I'd like to see Congress step in. We'll see what happens. I'll be back in a moment on ABL.